Okay, welcome to Notes 9.3 Part 2. Now we're going to talk about measures of variability. So it's often nice to have the average, but it's also nice to have a little bit even more information that says how far can you expect data points to be away from the average. So data can be described by its variability, which refers to the mean absolute deviation, sometimes referred to as MAD, M-A-D, for mean absolute deviation, M-A-D, and or the interquartile range. So these two phrases, this is sometimes referred to as the IQR. These two phrases can help us talk about variability. So what do you notice about the difference in the two dot plots below? Dot plot A right here and dot plot B. Well, dot plot A is more spread out, whereas dot plot B is more centered, right? So we have a bigger spread on dot plot A. We go all the way from 22 to 15, whereas dot plot B, it's kind of more clumped together in the center, right? So the spread of the data distribution, or the deviation, another way to describe deviation is if you take kind of this normal path, to deviate from that normal path would be to take a couple steps off to the side of it or to the other side of it. So the spread describes the variability. So if we break down this mean absolute deviation, we're talking about the average absolute value, which remember is always positive, of the spread. So we're going to find how far away points are from the mean and take the average of that. So that's basically what mean absolute deviation is. How far away data is from the mean. Right? So we've got 7 families here, and they're telling you how many people they have in their family. So the first thing you need to do is find the mean, right? So you're going to add up these numbers. They give you a total of 24, and then divide by 7 since you had 7 families. Gives you about 3.43, so we'll just round it to 3.4. Now you're going to go ahead in this column and say, okay, how far away is that number from the mean? So for instance, 3 is negative 0.4 units away from 3.4, right? 3 minus 3.4 gave you negative 0.4. 2 is negative 1.4 units away from the mean, right? 2, you have 1.4 less members in your family than the average mean they gave you. 4 is 0.6 above the mean. 2 is again negative 1.4 below the mean. 5 is 1.6 above the mean. 6 people is 2.6 above the mean, and then 2 again is negative 1.4. Okay? So now we take the absolute value, meaning we just turn these negatives into positives, right? So 0.4, 1.4, 0.6 stays positive, 1.4, 1.6, 2.6, and 1.4. And now we'll just take the average of this, right? So what is the average? We just add them all up and divide by 7 because there are 7 rows there. So when we add them up, we get 9.4 divided by 7 will give us 1.3. So we have a mean of 3.4 family members with a deviation or kind of steps away from that of 1.3. So we could have, some families have on average 1.3 more family members, whereas some families on average have 1.3 less family members, because again, this is an absolute value. So again, if this were the mean, right, you could go 1.3 this way and 1.3 this way to say, okay, this is where most of the data falls in. Right? So the interquartile range was the other phrase we're going to talk about, is the middle half of the data and is centered around the median. So the first thing you need to do is order the stuff nice and neat from least to greatest. So 46, 50, 51, 53, 58, 60, 64, two 70s, 75 and 76, right? So we've ordered them least to greatest. The second step here is to find the median. So when I find the median, I should have an even amount on each side. So notice I have 12 numbers here. So that means I'm going to have 6 on each side. So the median, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, happens right in between these two numbers, 58 and 60. So if I add 58 plus 60 and divide that by 2, I get my median of 59. So this is my median. All right. And now find the median of the upper and lower quartiles. So what do I do by that? So now I take half of the data right here, and I find its median, and then take the other half of the data right here and find its median, right? So I'm just segmenting it out into quarters, right? So here I have 6, so that means the median will be 1, 2, 3 in between 50 and 52, and same thing here. I have 6 numbers, so again the median will be in between 70 and 70. In this case it's just 70. So we call 70 quartile 3, and we call 50 and 51 added together, divide by 2, or 50.5, we call that quartile 1, right? And so now the IQR is we're just going to subtract to find the middle half. So most of this data is where? So the IQR, interquartile range, is going to be equal to quarter 3 minus quarter 1. And quarter 3 in this case was, 70, not 0, 70 minus quarter 1, which was 50.5. So our interquartile range, or the middle half of our data, is 19.5. See you in part 2.